Legion Behemoth Katarina, a novel of God's Legion, by J. T. Dowdy. Chapter 2. After 20 years as a tanker, I will show you things over the next few months that all the people who have only read spec sheets will never understand. Speed and firepower mean nothing next to concealability. He who shoots first wins. Okay, yes. I need a cannon which can punch through enemy armor, or my first shot will do nothing but give me away. And I do need the speed to get my vehicle into and out of positions. I also need excellent quality optics to see, and a crew who knows what they are doing. Mechanical reliability, so I do not get stranded in the middle of nowhere along with a communication system that actually works. So I am not waving signal flags out of an open hatch like an idiot. If you're riding on tracks, you must check the tension several times a day, or you are not going anywhere. I see some of you only care about the big three of firepower, mobility, and armor values, as your eyes are already glazing over. Oh boy, this is going to be a long couple of months for you. Opening Academy semester speech on armored combat at the Royal Falderlin Institute of Mismar 4, given by Ansel Kruger. Following their agreed-upon course, Katarina and Ansel were swinging wide around their target. The journey was over 500 miles, and while the Behemoth jogged over the dune-filled desert, Ansel could not help but be lulled to sleep by the rhythmic swaying of his partner's gait. The worst of the shock generated by the many thousand-ton machine failed to reach past the core's inertial dampeners, and the ride was almost as smooth as a wheeled vehicle on concrete. The mortal angel stifled a yawn with the back of his fist and looked to the bleak hollow screens, showing nothing but boring sand as far as he could see. He could see the great arms of the Behemoth pumping rhythmically in his peripheral vision. In front, nothing but the baking sand dunes and harsh creatures hurrying to get out of the machine's path. Ansel smiled as he thought of the many worlds owned by the various creators he had been on in his life. Each and every one of them had their own preferences, though they could theoretically live in the heart of a star should they wish to. Ansel could not really recall if the old man had a preference, but most of the Legion worlds he had been on were temperate and full of life. He stifled another yawn and took another drink of his heavily sugared coffee. "You know," Katarina said in rebuke, "one would think you have gotten used to how I run by now." The mortal angel yawned again. "Sorry," he replied, before shaking his head side to side to produce a clattering sounds as the data feed cables smacked against each other. He grinned as he took part in the game they both played by nagging each other. "It's not my fault you run like you're on your way to an all-you-can-eat buffet." The sentient reached forward to slap the back of her partner's helmet, which was why Ansel swore he wore the thing. "You're not the first partner I've had who kept falling asleep thanks to my driving. Don't make me force you to ride in one of the feet." "Speaking of," Ansel said, "just how many other people have farted in my chair?" Katarina fell silent as the core jittered, as the armored machine's steps faltered for a brief moment. Ansel closed his eyes and cursed himself for asking such a taboo question. "I'm sorry. I did not mean it that way." No, it's fine, really." The sentient's tone suggested it pained her greatly to even think about the answer. Finally, she said, "I could tell you, partner, but you have no frame of reference for the number I would quote you." Ansel felt slightly offended by his partner's statement, as he could count after all. Then he remembered he was thinking of time as any mortal would, and he was an infant when compared to some of the true beings of spirit he had worked alongside. Katarina continued, "The cycle my universe was made in was, let's just say, far older than the one we currently live in, and leave it at that. Sometimes I wonder if the one I was born in has any life left in it, or if the old man has dismantled it. He does that, you know. When a universe reaches its inevitable heat death, they are recycled to make room for others. What felt like a bucket of ice water coursed down the gunner's spine as he shuddered at the sheer enormity of time his partner was talking about. Such a time scale was simply incomprehensible to mortals with no frame of reference besides large numbers equals big. He worked his mouth a few times before saying, "Is it hard? Living this long, I mean. I have never done this before, and sometimes what you say scares the ever-loving bejesus out of me." The honest question made Katarina laugh out loud and snort. You will eventually get used to it, or turn homicidal and frothing at the mouth until you're barking at the night sky. The only way to stay sane is by having a good partner, or a good crew. Ansel knew that particular tone. "Crew?" he asked as he narrowed one of his eyes in suspicion. "I told you this story." "No," Ansel replied, groaning inwardly at his partner's seeming forgetfulness. "You didn't?" "Oh." The sentient laughed nervously. "Well, see, back in the day I used to command this really kick-ass battlecruiser. But, well, this Confrenesi battleship crossed my T and gutted me with its broadside, and I lost pretty much everyone. That was only like the 12th time that had ever happened, and... You know, look, I don't do so good in the void. I like my boots firmly on the ground, thank you very much." Ansel swallowed hard as he wished to the gods above he hadn't asked that question. He reached back, and his partner crashed her knuckles into his. "Whatever happened, you are here now, Kat," he said, eyeing the faint mirage of the city of Buchenwald in the distance. "And I am proud to be here with you." "Damned straight," the woman whooped, as she opened a channel to the Legion Master. "Yo, boss man, you good for us to start our run?" The open comms channel erupted with what sounded like hundreds of cloth-tearing heavy railguns, and the too familiar sound of onyx cannons belching 5-inch-high explosive death as fast as their loaders could sling the beastly shells. Obviously, the Legion Master had started the fight early. "Just waiting on you," Lucifer replied, as if it was just another Tuesday. Katarina accelerated the 400-foot-tall machine to only a portion of its full, terrifying sprinting speed. On paper, the Behemoth could go as fast as 198 miles an hour on flat ground, but the sucking sand and dunes drug it down to only 120 as it hurtled towards lightly defended city walls. As the giant metal arms pumped up and down, Ansel only dared to use the shoulder-mounted missile batteries to launch death towards their target, to keep the anti-armor crews heads down. Hundreds of rockets shot from their launch tubes, only to be replaced by the small industrial-scale nanite foundries, feeding fresh elements and nanites into the launchers. Each missile used more of the material stores than equal-sized cannon rounds would have, but Ansel leaned on the side of overkill when forced to undertake stupid tasks his machine was not made for. As the mortal angel was saturating the walls and their surrounding structures with missiles, Katarina used her fist to smash the big red button, which sounded the titanic horns built into the side of the Behemoth's head. The ear-splitting and window-shattering noise served two purposes. First, it let friendly troops in the area know to get the hell out of the way. And second, it drew the attention of the defenders off of the Legion Master's frontal assault for a brief moment. Apparently, a charging, screaming, 44,000-ton metal war machine made even the first creation look for somewhere else to be, as only a pitiful handful of defenses opened up on the Behemoth. The old-fashioned, chemically-powered cannon rounds of the slaves bounced from the armored skin of the walker. A few low-caliber rail emplacements easily penetrated, but the damage they caused was within the Behemoth's capacity to self-repair. What few wall-mounted AA guns survived Ansel's bombardment, spat a torrent of hate which sounded like angry hail hitting a window. Ansel spared a few scant seconds to watch the feed showing the Legion Master and his bodyguards, known as Century Zero, rush the confused defenders. But the majority of the city's attention was now on the charging Metal Death Mountain. As Katarina neared the ancient and stout reinforced mud wall, she brought her body into a double knee slide, which set off warning alarms and left 2 deep furrows in the ground. Lucifer said he wanted a distraction, and by the gods the sentient would give it to him. Crossing her arms in front of the engine's chest, the Behemoth slammed into the wall like the hammer of God Almighty. Debris from the structure and surrounding buildings scythed through that quarter of the city like grape shot, and flung yet more debris in high arcs for almost a half-mile. Katarina forced the nanite repair systems to work overtime as the lumbering machine rose slowly to its feet. With a few stumbling steps, the Behemoth began smashing everything in its path, while Ansel worked the many weapons available to him like the caffeine and hate-fueled professional he was. Being completely in tune with his partner, thanks to the neural interface of his helmet, the gunner was able to time the movements of the Behemoth's dancing arms to shoot their mounted weapons. Now they were not wildly swinging in the running motion they had been before, taking extra care to not send anything towards the legionnaires coming from the front of the city. Spiral contrails of the guided missiles quickly coated the city in a blanket of greasy white smoke. Suddenly, warning lights and klaxons blared inside the Behemoth's core as hollow screens appeared, spewing data regarding their ruined left knee joint. Ansel's fingers danced across his haptic and regular controls as he siphoned emergency power and nanites to the ruined joint. From deep within the city, the defenders had fired an anti-orbital cannon. Its second round slammed into the upper torso of the Behemoth, sending superheated shrapnel out of the exit hole like a shotgun blast. Stumbling back and fighting for balance, Katarina quickly calculated the trajectory of the round as she fought to stabilize their ride, and Ansel sent his answering railgun round where his partner said the emplacement was. Just for good measure, the mortal angel blanketed the area around the defender's cannon with white phosphorus and launched several missiles which exploded in a shower of monomolecular tungsten penetrators. No third round was fired. Both pilots swore as their damaged left knee buckled and took the great machine down on all fours. This had been Ansel's point to the Legion Master. The sheer size of their machine made it impractical for frontline use. A Behemoth was made to support the smaller armored elements as they rushed into battle by firing over their heads from miles behind, not join them. Besides, a Goliath had enough armor to shrug off some of the lower-caliber starship weapons, which could be mounted on ground carriages. With a Behemoth's size, if they wanted to keep the same weapons as they currently had, then they could not add the same percentage of armor and be anywhere near as mobile. The Goliaths had less weaponry, and the old saying of opportunity cost sparing, no one held true. The Goliath was the anvil, and the Behemoth was the long-range hammer. Ansel and Katarina shared an uncomfortable few minutes, as they swore they could both feel more weapons coming to bear on their position. Yet nothing happened. The sentient gave a few more precious minutes to the repair nanites to ensure their knee could take the strain of movement before heading back into the fight. Though, she no longer lashed out with kicks at buildings, instead letting her partner's weapons handle the majority of the heavy lifting. After about an hour of continuous combat, the great war machine's ammunition reserves reached 10%. Following doctrine, Katarina opened a communication with the field commander to let them know they would be withdrawing to rearm, and was surprised to hear the Legion Master's voice instead of Legate Azrael. "Excellent work, you two," the old creator said cheerfully. I must say, your distraction was epic. The way those bricks flew through the air. Oh, just beautiful. Are you both all right? Is your rig mobile? Ansel twisted in his chair to mouth the words, "I have a bad feeling about this," to his partner. Katarina nodded her agreement and keyed the transmit icon. "We're both fine, though we won't be winning any races or beauty contests anytime soon. How is Centurion Ammon and the rest of your boys?" "Bruised, but fine. We lost 2 of our younger angels to the first creation, and 1 mortal took a mortar to the chest. Several more are wounded, but they should make a full recovery." Something about the casual way his boss mentioned losing only a handful of men when millions had been killed previously bothered Ansel. Such a thing should simply not be possible. Yet a mortal or angel did not get chosen to be a part of Century Zero for collecting bottle caps. They were the deadliest soldiers in the entirety of the Legion for a reason. The old man's next words made the gunner feel like his guts had turned to water. "We will leave Azrael to clean up this mess and help Bast take back her worlds in this sector. Proceed to these coordinates and load yourself on Morana. I have some upgrades to put on your machine before you help me with a few things." Katarina's scowl was almost a tangible object as she said, "What about the next world in our campaign? Samar." Ansel saw Lucifer shake his head down below as he continued. "Samar's defenders glassed their own planet before fleeing from the system. The system was resource poor, but it will still need to be held since it sits on a major trade lane. Unfortunately, the first creation seeded the area around the good asteroids with one hell of a stealth minefield. Bast is working on clearing them. And Gaia lost Gleishaupt." Katarina sat forward in her seat. "That's impossible. Gleishaupt is a fortress. I mean, there is not much trebuchets can do against an orbital invasion. But you get my point." The small figure on the ground below shrugged, then disappeared to stand in the Behemoth's armored core. The Legion Master was standing in front of Ansel's console, leaning on a security rail. The sound of rending metal could be heard coming from the Creator's hands. "Gleishaupt is the latest in a long line of worlds to fall thanks to Ahura Mazda's spies," Lucifer said. "Before you ask, no. This information is not public knowledge, and you two are one of the few to know. Morana and I do not wish to cause panic-induced witch hunts across the known universes as neighbors turn on each other, because someone did not say good morning in the correct tone." The information slapped the 2 pilots across the face. Ansel was left speechless, while his partner recovered almost instantly. "How bad is it without any sugar coating?" Katarina asked. Lucifer finished crushing the metal railing in his hands. "Very, very bad. When you combine the kidnapping of Samael's son with the innumerable spies sowing discourse amongst the tool-using societies out there, well, let's just say there are only a handful of nations which would ever reasonably stand up to us at their full strength. I am sure she has acquired some of them by now. And as for the rest, well, we are still jockeying for position." Ansel wanted to ask questions, but his partner silenced him through the mental interface and promised to tell him later. "I see," Katarina said. "Has she brought any of these races to the party yet?" "Not as such, no. But it is only a matter of time, a few more years or even decades, and the Legion will be too crippled internally and too busy putting out fires that any major offensive will be far too sluggish and cost more lives than it should have in the first place. Since Gleishaupt is worthless now, do we just neutron hose it and mop up what's left?" Lucifer was about to reply, when movement from one, the Legionnaires down on the ground drew their attention, as part of the hollow screen flickered and drew a box around him to draw visual attention. Centurion Ammon, the commander of Century Zero, was tapping his left wrist with his pointer and middle finger on his right hand. The old creator held out his hand with one finger up in the universal sign to wait a moment, and Ansel was surprised to feel the great machine move to mirror the gesture. Neither he nor Katarina had commanded it to move. Eamon then raised a gauntlet to circle it over his head, then point a knife hand over his left shoulder, up towards the sky. And again the great machine moved its head to look. The 1-mile-long figure of the battleship Morana was lowering itself to the ground with powerful Agrav drives. The Behemoth gave a thumbs-up gesture, and Lucifer stepped away from the railing. I have made arrangements on one of my brother El's worlds to have upgrades available for your rig, since I will be going there anyway. We can start with the small stuff first, before moving on to the old and forbidden. Understood, Katarina said, as the Legion Master vanished to reappear back on the ground. Ansel took off his helmet and took a sip of his coffee dregs as the walker began moving towards where the ship was coming down. So, he mused, drawing out the word, I must have hit my head really hard this morning, because I swear I did not understand a single word of your conversation. Katarina gave up trying to walk through the rubble and just started stepping on top of things. It was a bit cryptic, but luckily for you, I can translate. She took in an exaggerated deep breath and said, The war is not going well. Ansel snorted as he stood up to stretch before grabbing his coffee cup and wandering to their kitchen. If that was free, I would still feel ripped off. Why is there all of this worry about just one being? As the gunner made his way to the small kitchen, his partner's voice followed by way of small speakers. Ahura Mazda is a creator partner. In terms of age, she is far younger than the old man, but older than most of the other creators you are familiar with, around what you know of as the known universes here in 3-dimensional space. Is she older than you? She's a few cycles old, Katarina replied, as if her answer told her partner everything he needed to know. Anyway, she was one of the old man's companions once upon a time. It's complicated, so don't ask. Oh, forget it. You're going to argue anyway. You always do about this. You do remember the true angels and the creators who made them don't really share your views on monogamy, right? Ansel grunted as he stepped into the small kitchen and removed the spill-proof lid on his insulated coffee cup. The now mortal angel thought back to his childhood when his parents would read to him every night from their large, ornate copy of the Way. He grew up unable to understand why the leader of his nation would not look down on and condemn certain things, especially infidelity. He, like most mortals, considered relationships to be an almost sacred contract. It was only after he had been made partially angelic that he began to understand why the old man would not personally condemn some things, leaving the condemning to the mortals. His parents' bones had long since turned to dust, and yet, here he was, still living. More importantly, still feeling. But he could go to sleep and forget and rest. Beings of spirit could never do such a thing. Katarina had explained to him how his viewpoints would change as he aged. And though he was only a hair over 7,000 years old, he had already abandoned most of the convictions of his youth. He loathed to admit it publicly, but he was frightened as to what kind of ethics and morals he would adopt in the future, because he had already changed so much. The sentience continued. Ahura and the old man were a serious item back in the day, though I always found her about as mentally slow as a lobotomized brick. When she was sane, she was really nice and kind of motherly. Oh, and she loved to cook some of the best mortal food you will ever have tasted, even though she did not require it. Gods! We would all start fist fights to get to her fresh-baked bread first. I have tried to duplicate her recipes, but I'll be damned if I know how she did it. Anyways, the problems began after the first creation began sneaking out of their prison. Ahura was determined to help her lover fight back and went off looking for help and knowledge in forbidden places. Ansel poured a full scooper's worth of sugar into his now clean coffee cup and set the coffee machine setting to pitch black industrial poop your pants strength. What kind of place would be forbidden to a creator who can make their own universe? He asked, pushing the brewing button. Forbidden per the old man's rules, Ansel, and for good reason. Without help, the higher dimensions and the way time flows will drive a person not used to them insane. Without going into details which I swore to keep secret, let us just say there also exist places which are not compatible to life, as you would understand it. Not compatible with existence as we know it, time as we know it. Don't ask. I see, the gunner said, only to be cut off. No partner, you don't. Let me just say, the old man is to other creators as your age is to mine. He experimented and built many things and places in his horribly long life, and there are reasons we live here, and not there. Just as there are reasons as to why those places still exist, and why certain people still exist. The whole thing is terribly complicated. The mortal angel removed his now steaming mug from the brewing machine and took an experimental sip. With a grimace, he added more sugar and stirred. Another sip saw the gunner smile. Liquid laxative, the perfect cup of coffee. Just the way he liked it. Since he was already here, he began making a sandwich to take back to his station. It sounds like you're making God out to be a kid with an ant farm. I know that is what he has to be due to the whole seeming omniscience thing. But is that really true? I thought the old text said God's name started with a Y, Yahweh, or something like it. A noise drew Ansel's attention from the doorway. His partner was standing there with fear-filled eyes. "Shut up and stop talking," she said in a tone which brokered no argument. "It's really a bad time to be throwing that name around." Ansel did not understand why his partner was so upset. He took a drink and said, "It's just a name." Then his eyes went wide as he remembered the rule of why everyone called his boss Old Man. Because he was omniscient and could not help but be nosy when he heard something that piqued his interest or angered him. He did so hate the name the first creation had given him long ago. Katarina moved faster than any mortal could hope to follow, to clamp one of her hands over her partner's mouth to shut him up. Ansel's muffled argument broke off as he realized the breath coming from between his partner's fingers was steaming in the now Arctic air of the kitchen. Ice crystals were forming on the stainless steel appliances, and he swore he felt a third presence in their bipedal home. Katarina spun around to throw her arms wide to the side, in a gesture meant to keep her partner safe. As she did so, she accidentally knocked the open cup from the gunner's hand. The cup hit the deck, and the liquid inside shattered like glass in the bitter cold. "I know you're having a bad time right now," Katarina said in a fearful yet defensive tone. But he didn't know, couldn't have known, and meant no offense to you. He just said some stupid things he shouldn't have. Don't worry, I'll work with him to get better at this. A swirling mass of what looked to be dark mist filled and blocked out the light from the hallway outside of the kitchen. Though Ansel could see nothing but swirling black fog, he swore he could feel eyes staring at him, along with a feeling of barely controlled fury. A voice spoke, and it lacked anything of what a normal person would call empathy or compassion. As we were a little rushed during your ascendancy ceremony, Ansel, I will forgive you for your ignorance of the rules this one time." Ansel's teeth began to chatter like a jackhammer, and the very air in his lungs burned with ice crystals. Due to our proximity, I could not help but overhear your statement. Do not, ever, call me by that name again. You are not wrong by its use, but the personality associated with said name is less than cordial on the best of days, and I would like to remain as I am without being forced to change into the psychotic monster their beliefs made me out to be. Can we all agree on not forcing such stupid and potentially deadly to you issue ever again?" Ansel tried to nod his agreement, but in the insane cold, he ended up looking like the bobblehead doll Katarina kept in the core on her console as a joke. Katarina caught something tossed to her from the middle of the swirling fog, and the voice continued, though it sounded closer to when the Legion Master had been standing in the core a few minutes ago. "I was going to save the surprise of you two joining Century Zero until after we made port again. However, you will need to see to your partner's education before that. Give him the dagger and tell him everything he needs to know so as to not make dumb mistakes like this again. It is getting more difficult to keep the personality of that name in check the more I extend myself to fight the first creation and their puppeteers." The presence vanished from the kitchen door, and Katarina turned the Behemoth's internal heaters on full blast as Ansel's legs gave out, and he slid down the cabinet to sit on the freezing cold floor. "Holy crap," he tried to say, but it came out more of an unintelligible gibberish. Katarina folded her arms across her non-existent chest and said, "You just offended a creator, and lived to tell about it. Gold star for effort there, partner. Oh, this is yours now." She tossed a sheathed, sapphire-pommeled dagger at her partner, who fumbled it with cold fingers. Ansel's fingers were numb and slightly blue-colored, but he managed to draw the heavy blade a few inches before stopping to stare at the odd, silvery metal of the blade. It almost gave off its own inner light, and the intricate folding pattern of the metal was a mesmerizing kaleidoscope that the gunner swore was moving ever so slightly. Letting the heavy dagger fall back into its scabbard, he looked to his partner. "This is a legate's dagger. Why did he give me this?" Words failed him, and he chose to be silent to not make any more mistakes on matters he knew nothing about. The ancient sentience snorted and shook her head side to side. "Unless we know them personally, the only way any of us know who and what the Legion Master truly is by looking for one of these." Katarina reached into the false nanite flesh of her stomach and withdrew an identical dagger to the one Ansel now held in his hands, though hers looked like it had been through hell and back. She put it back inside of her and continued, "The bearers of such trinkets are officially legates. Congratulations, by the way. But I still outrank you due to my age. That dagger signifies the trust the Master has in all who figure out what he is by themselves. And if a person is a legate with a blade that is not as fancy, they do not know, and should be left to figure it out on their own. The reason for the trust is simple. A creator is essentially a being of spirit." "Obviously," Ansel interjected, only to shrink back from the look Katarina leveled at him. "Existing primarily as spirit." She pressed in a tone which told the gunner to shut up. Such a being can be influenced and changed by the perception of those around them. Say, for example, you take a typically male creator, and then have all of the angels and mortals around them view them as female. Depending on the severity of the belief, the creator would eventually be forced to change to fit the viewpoint of the masses, so long as they continued to both call and view the creator as such. Even if they change their name to become what they wish to be, The old name and perception will still hold sway over them. Being that the two of us were once mortal flesh and blood, we are not susceptible to such things as we are grounded, for lack of a better term. A true being of spirit exists more in the quantum realm than our one made of matter and sensible rules. Understood, Ansel said, rising to his feet to stare at the still frozen water pipes and lament over his lost cup of coffee. I will do my best to never do that again. And when he said we were joining Century Zero, that was not a joke, was it? Nope. Say, did I ever tell you about the time I used to be a part of Legio Zero back during the last time it was needed? Ansel buried his face in his hands and groaned. No, Cat. Sounds like just another thing you never told me. The mortal angel really did wonder if the reason why his partner had so many previous gunners was because they all ran away screaming from her incredibly frustrating quirks.